Today we're moving into the book of Exodus. Exodus is such a critical piece of history for the Jewish people, the Christian people who have the historical background of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. A lot of time has passed since we last heard from them. Joseph has died in the last part of Genesis. He has moved to Egypt, and time has went by. As I've looked into some history, some of the theologians and historians that I looked into talked about how there was jealousy of the Egyptians toward the Hebrews, which is another name for the Jewish people, the Israelites, those people who were following here, and that they then put them into slavery. They were hard workers, and they took advantage of them, and they put them into slavery, and that's when pyramids were built. And so when we see those pyramids, we can safely assume that the Hebrew people had something to do, or quite a bit to do, with their construction. So we are moving on into Exodus, and remember, time has went by. These are the names of the sons of Israel who went to Egypt with Jacob, each with his family. So again, we're going to hear the names of Jacob's boys: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. The descendants of Jacob numbered 70 in all. Joseph was already in Egypt. Now Joseph and all his brothers and all that generation died, but the Israelites were exceedingly fruitful. They multiplied greatly, increased in number, and became so numerous that the land was filled with them. They're flourishing. They're flourishing in this land that was given to them, this land of Goshen that is in Egypt. Then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came to power in Egypt. "Look," he said to his people, "the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they will become even more numerous, and if war breaks out, we'll join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country." So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor, and they built Pithom and Ramesses as store cities for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter with harsh labor in brick and mortar and with all kinds of work in the fields. In all their harsh labor, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. And so they call them the Israelites here. That's the first we hear of that. We hear often in scripture where a people is named after a person. So the Ishmaelites, we see in there, we see other names that are used, and it's their lineage. It's all of the people who descended from them. So with the Israelites, this is Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. This is his boys and all of the children that they had. And so time has went by. They are multiplying and multiplying. Generations have passed until this new king doesn't even remember Joseph. He doesn't mean anything to him. And so he's taking the steps he thinks he needs to do to protect his people. And he does not see the Israelites as his people. So the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, "When you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, let her live." The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, "Why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live?" The midwives answered Pharaoh, Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrive, making excuses here. So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. Then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people: every Hebrew boy that is born, you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live. Okay, so it didn't work to have the midwives take care of this. In fact, God blessed the midwives and gave them their own children. So he turned to his own people and said, Hebrew boys, go in the river, the Nile. Chapter 2. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Can you imagine the terror of hiding your child for 3 months, praying that none of the Egyptian people became aware of him because they were going to kill him? I can't imagine the terror. And knowing how babies are, as he continued to grow, a newborn baby, maybe you can keep them kind of quiet. Their cries aren't very scary. But as they grow, their cries are more demanding and louder. And she came to a point where she knew she could hide him no longer. So she's placed him in this basket with the papyrus, with the tar. And she has a daughter. And that little girl stands back to see what's going to happen to her baby brother. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, not knowing it was Pharaoh's daughter, not knowing that it was the sister. The sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" Acting like she just came upon this and she's a witness to these things, a clueless witness. And yes, go, she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. She got her own mom, got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby." She's saying this to the baby's mom, not knowing it is the baby's mom. "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman, the mother of the baby, took the baby and nursed him. And when the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." What a blessing for this mother to get to watch her son live and to be able to keep him until he is weaned, maybe for a couple of years. It would have been bittersweet knowing that she would have to take him to Pharaoh's daughter. But she knew through all of this that despite the pain she was feeling, her son was going to live and was going to live in riches that she would never understand. On to, this is chapter 2, verse 11. One day after Moses had grown up, so it just skips up to where he's grown up, he went out to where his people were, the Egyptians. The Israelites. So he knows that's where he came from. He would know his sister and any other siblings that he may have. So he has some awareness of the Israelites being his people. And he watched them at their hard labor. he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out and saw two Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" The man said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "What I did must have become known." Somebody saw. These people know that I've killed somebody. And word has gotten around. So the very next verse says, when Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. Now a priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came along and drove them away, but Moses got up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. When the girls returned to Reuel, their father, he asked them, "Why have you returned so early?" They answered, "An Egyptian," thinking he's an Egyptian. So he has been made to look like an Egyptian through his upbringing. And when you picture the Egyptians, you know that they would have wore the eye makeup, that he would have had Egyptian style clothes on, most likely. But they say, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds." Okay. "He even drew water for us and watered the flock." "And where is he?" Reuel asked his daughters. "Why did you leave him? Invite him to have something to eat." Moses agreed to stay with the man who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." During that long period, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. A lot has happened in a few short chapters of Exodus. Moses has been born, has been found by Pharaoh's daughter, has grown up, and has had to flee from the place that he knows as home because his grandfather, the Pharaoh, wants to kill him because he, acting as a Israelite, a Hebrew, has killed an Egyptian. So Moses leaving and going to Midian started a whole new chapter in his life, and one where an Israelite gave his daughter to be Moses' wife. So here we are. And we will pick this back up again tomorrow.